Michael Carrick is said to be the frontrunner to take over as interim manager at Manchester United ahead of the Manchester derby at Old Trafford on Saturday. Just some notable career accomplishments for Carrick. His last role was at Middlesbrough from 2022 to 2025. In his first season, he took them to the playoffs. They also reached the Carabao Cup semi-finals, which sent Craig to the positivity corner. You may remember that was against Chelsea.
Was it?
A little while back.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and since then it didn't go as well after that, but he steadied the ship there. He's also been involved at Manchester United before in 3 games back in 2021. No losses in that time there, and of course there comes his career as a midfielder, which was very significant with Manchester United. Mark Ogden back with us now, so tell us, Mark.
Just pipped, by the way, you don't put this in your resume, just pipped Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to the job.
No. Could put that one in as well. Yeah, tell us more about it. Tell us why it is Michael Carrick that's the front runner here then, Mark.
Well, there's a few reasons, but I think primarily the fact that when Carrick and Solskjaer were at United in the past, it was Carrick and Kieran McKenna that did most of the coaching. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer wasn't really a coach, so I think United looked at it and thought, well, there's no point in hiring a manager who doesn't really spend much time on the training pitch. So Carrick wins on that score, that he's actually a manager and somebody who can coach. But I think that also they realised that going back to a guy who was basically fired before from the Man United job because it didn't work out would be seen as very much of a backward step. And we spoke yesterday on the show about how some of the senior players at United, I've been told, have expressed their preference for Michael Carrick on that basis, that he's a coach and he's a player that hasn't failed at Man United in the past. So it's not the greatest scenario, is it, in terms of they're scratching around looking for somebody who can pick up the reins until the end of the season. They're not looking for somebody off the top shelf here. But Michael Carrick in many ways is the preferred option because 1, he coaches, and 2, he hasn't failed at Man United in the past. I
saw Oliver Holt tweeting earlier, Augie, about this is insanity. Interim manager with half of the season to go. I mean, is it purely because the Amorim thing, they just made a kind of late-ish decision, just had enough of him, or is it because they just don't have the right answer out there and are not confident to go and try and get somebody full-time? Because there's a hell of a lot still to play for this year.
And Augie, 1 second, we have welcomed Mario Melchiot to the chat. We'll get to
Sorry, Mario.
Mm-hmm. But Augie, yes, please answer Craig's question.
Well, the Amorim situation was coming to a head. I think United knew it was going to happen at some point, and I was told it was going to happen after the Leeds game, regardless of what he said at Ellen Road. So United knew it was coming, but I think the reality is that the options that are there right now in terms of a proper manager, a full-time manager, there aren't many there. I mean, people have talked about Oliver Glasner and Andoni Iraola. If they wanted Glasner, they could have got Glasner because he's got 6 months on his contract, so it wouldn't be an expensive deal to do. So it suggests they don't want Oliver Glasner long-term. So the best managers, as we know, are the ones that are probably going to be available in the summer. Thomas Tuchel, Mauricio Pochettino, Carlo Ancelotti, maybe some others. So United's viewpoint is to patch it up until the summer. They've done it before. Let's not forget. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's done it in the past and got the job, which was a debatable matter, and Ralph Rangnick as well, which was a disaster. So they've been down this route before, and it hasn't always worked out. But the view is that rather than make a jump now for a permanent appointment, they're going to go for an interim coach. But the problem is, by doing that, when they're looking at summer targets, players nowadays want to know who the coach is, what his coaches are, what his philosophy, that buzzword is. And United can't tell them because they don't know who the manager's going to be next season, so they might miss out on transfer targets. Say you're Adam Wharton, or say you're Carlos Baleba, or that sort of player, Elliot Anderson. The first question you're going to ask is, who's the manager next season? And they can't answer that question, so it's setting them back. But because there aren't any obvious options out there right now that could come in and take the job, I mean, I'm not being funny, but Xabi Alonso's not going to be in the frame because 1, he's just been sacked by Real Madrid, and 2, he's got a connection with Liverpool. So there aren't many options that are available that are credible. So in United's eyes, the least worst option is to go back to somebody that knows the club, that knows them, that knows the squad, and has got an experience of doing the job that can tide them over. But again, it's a sticking plaster solution rather than the ideal solution.
But right, say for example, United, right? By the way, if Michael Carrick has a bad time, you're just going to say, "Oh, I told you they should have hired Solskjaer," aren't you?
No. Can I just say something though?
What?
There was something that Augie said there that I just detest. When he talks about...
There's a lot of things Augie says.
Well, that's true. When he talks about, the players have a preference for Carrick. The minute you start listening to players from a boardroom perspective, you are absolutely asking the inmates to run the asylum. I mean, if the players have had any sort of say in this, then you know it's doomed. absolute garbage. You do not.
I agree with that completely.
You do not go and start asking players who you prefer and what do you think and what would you do, and no, you paid to play football. And right now you can't even play football. Never mind give your input on who should be the next manager.
Right, okay, here's the question. And it's hypothetical at the moment.
No.
But you know, Michael Carrick, he's got some experience in the Championship and of coaching, but you know, this is a different kettle of fish here. Say United, say the next 6, 7, 8 games, they scratch the odd draw and lose 5 or 6 games. What do they do? What do they do?
Well, it's a good question because the next 2 games are Man City at home and Arsenal away. So you'd have to say that it's going to be very difficult the way United are playing right now to get anything out of those games. So all of a sudden they go into the 3rd game against Fulham at home. It's almost a crisis match if you lose against City and Arsenal. So I take your point. What do they do in a month's time if it's not going well? Well, they can't go to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, can they? I mean, I think Brian Robson's a club ambassador. He's still there. I mean, this is what we're talking about now. This is how ridiculous it is that United are in this situation whereby they're just trying to get from now to the end of the season. There's no cup games to play. They've basically got 17 league games to play. So surely at some point they're getting a couple of the African nations players back this weekend and Burma and Ahmad. Things might settle down, but you know, United have been so inconsistent this season. It's amazing they're still in with a chance of qualifying for the Champions League. Never mind Europe, but you know, Michael Carrick's got a big job on his hands. It's going to be very difficult to achieve anything significant at United, but like I say, the Champions League is still there to be taken.
No, I agree. I think the 7 in the league, so the most focus should be to try to get in the Champions League. But the key thing is as well, the way they played. Like, you know, you saw them changing the system, the way they were playing now with 4 at the back. Some of the players that they brought into the team are maybe used to how Amarin wanted to play. Now they got to change the system again to the new manager coming in. So the key thing is the culture of the club. That's what the main focus should be. Focus on the culture of the club and then try to build from there. But if they keep on bumping around because Carrick comes in, Woodgate wants to be part of it, Rooney, I heard Rooney talking that he was interested as well to join. But the thing is, get the culture ready, because if they don't get the culture ready, they're going to be spending money or spending tactical decision making, and it's going to go wrong again.
Wait, did you just say there Wayne Rooney said he was interested?
I saw some talk. I saw some talk about that on social media, but it felt like somebody had put a headline to a quote, and I didn't quite put the 2 and 2 together.
Yeah. And anyway, that's a lovely Christmas present you've got there, Mario.
Yes, my friend.
The hat.
Is he cold? He's got a jacket. He's got the zipper. I must be freezing.
To the point, though, and looking at the table.
Hey, Stevie, for you, Stevie, for you,
Thank
Stevie.
you. Thank you.
It's not the worst time to have to take a team over with where they are. Is it?
Well, as Mark says, it looks like they've gone from A to trying to get to B. And when they get to B, they're going to try and get to C, and C to D. I'm not going to go much further because I don't know all the letters of the alphabet. But that's how it feels. They're just trying to get to the next step and then try to get to the next step. Trust me, and Augie said it, there's a lot of pressure now on Michael Carrick because there was an air of, not excitement yesterday in the game against Brighton, but there was an air of anticipation that things were going to move. Even just a change in management with Darren Fletcher from Burnley to Brighton in the Cup, that at home against Brighton there was going to be, you know, more positivity, more energy, you know, and it all sort of fizzled out in the end. But trust me, Ratcliffe, Barada and Wilcox, and certainly Barada and Wilcox, because I'm sure Ratcliffe's not too bothered with these billions in the bank, are having sleepless nights thinking, what if? What if this just fails? What if Michael Carrick can't get a tune? How bad is this going to look? Because we're going to have to fire the interim for another interim. You know, we're going to have to go searching around, digging for people that can't get jobs, probably to take over a huge job. So they are biting their fingernails at boardroom level, thinking that it has to be at least feasible and passable. You know, there has to be enough results to say this is getting us through to the end of the season, and we can make an informed decision. And I'm not trying to be negative, but we've seen this United side. They could easily lose 5 or 6 games, easily, right, in a row, and that becomes a point for the board that just is a nightmare. And then they've got a huge decision to make.
Is that not the biggest problem at the end of the day?
Yeah.
The biggest problem they've got is the squad they've got isn't good enough. So whether it's Michael Carrick or Ole Gunnar Solskjaer or anybody else, how are you supposed to win with this team? I mean, so, you know, the fact that we're talking about who the manager is kind of deflecting away from what Wilcox and all the other people have been doing and the players they've been bringing in, because that's how bad they are. But it actually doesn't matter. You could stick Pep in charge of this team and they might not get into the Champions League. That's how bad the team is and the squad is.
So what's the realistic, Oggy, the realistic best case scenario here going forward for Manchester United?
Well, the best case scenario is that they get in the Champions League, and it's still possible because, they have had some good results this season. I'm at Anfield now. United won here this season, so they can actually get some good results. They've got players coming back, but ultimately, I agree with the guys that you're only as strong as your weakest link, and United have got a lot of weak links in that squad that they can't actually replace. They can't find somebody in midfield that can replace Ugarte because they haven't got the money to do it. Same at right back with Dallos. They haven't really got the quality they need. I mean, Seny Lammers has done okay in goal, but he never keeps a clean sheet. So they've got so many issues to address, and I don't know which coach can come in and sort that out. They've got to go back to they're going to go to back four, obviously now that Amorim's gone, but they weren't very good with the back four under Erik ten Hag. They were actually pretty bad with their back four. So, there's no obvious solution. There's no silver bullet. Well, where do they go? I mean, Michael Carrick has to just come in and hope that there's a bit of momentum. But like I say, he's got a nightmare start. City and Arsenal. Look, you can get a win against City maybe, but I can't see it. Really tough games to start with. He needs to get some momentum in there. I think what Michael Carrick should do, if he can, is bring an experienced coach alongside him, because what I'm hearing at the moment is that, we hear people talk about Jonathan Woodgate. His brother Graham was a coach, who's been a coach at the FA at Newcastle. I'm only hearing young coaches, and that was the problem that Solskjaer had when he had Kieran McKenna and Carrick. You need a greybeard in there, someone that's been and seen and done it and can actually advise and counsel Michael Carrick as to what to do. I mean, but there's no experienced coach that I'm hearing at the moment, and that is a problem because too many young coaches got no experience. It just doesn't bode well for Man United. So, but to answer your question, Kay, they can get in the Champions League. If they get in Europe, great, but they can get in the Champions League, and it's still there for them to get, but they have to pick up some form pretty quickly.
Somebody like Mike Phelan, who's been around, who's obviously been at United, is that the kind of person?
Yep.
I don't know.
I'm not sure Mick was a coach, to be fair, but you know what I mean. They need somebody who can, just bring some experience to the situation and advise and counsel, because I do think that the coaches are quite young at the moment.
Even Sir Alex needed a sounding board. Very experienced guys beside him, and you kind of get the feeling that's what Oggy's talking about. You look at the United side, and defensively they're poor, right? I know they had a few players out, and De Ligt's been a big miss for them, and all that sort of stuff. Because he's been, when he was fit, he was a leader for them at the back. The question would be, have they got enough in the middle of the park and the front line to dissolve the problems they've got at the other end? And that will take, obviously Mbema's coming back, that will take Mbema continuing his form, it will take Cunha stepping up, starting to score goals, it will take Sesko hitting a run of form, because he needs games. It will take all these players playing really well and doing the business at that end to take the pressure off at the other end. Because you get the feeling watching this United side, if you to say to them, right, okay, we're going to try and keep 4 or 5 clean sheets in a row and give us a base to work from, they ain't capable of doing that. So they're going to have to do it at the front end.
Mario?
No, it's also going to be a problem, Greg, because look, if they're going to play now, right? They're going after the way of playing now, but they're so used to what they have been doing. Like, they first had to learn, they were with a coach, that they had to learn the whole new system and the way of playing and everything. So I think it hit a lot of the players' confidence as well. I think the confidence is very low in that team. I was watching the game yesterday, and I see the way they were playing against Brighton. Brighton looked like Man United, the way they were playing between the lines. They were just waiting and testing them and asking them almost like to invite them to come on to them. And I was like watching, and I was like, what's happening here? Because it looks like a team that now, of course, everybody wants to play. Of course, everybody wants to show to the coach, I'm ready to go. But it looks so not gelled. The team it's not only like, we can talk about the quality of the players, but let's put that to a side. But it also looked really disorganized. It's not melt in one team. It's just all individuals and doing their job and hoping to do a good job. And that is what the biggest problem is going to be for them.
Yes, all eyes will be on that Manchester derby then, as if they weren't already.
Mikel Arteta's work at Arsenal is being viewed in an even brighter light after the recent coaching shakeups elsewhere. With Chelsea parting ways with Enzo Maresca and Manchester United moving on from Ruben Amorim, the contrast is hard to miss. Arsenal has kept moving forward under Arteta, giving him time through difficult stretches, and now seeing the payoff as the club pushes again in the Premier League title race. It also raises a bigger question about strategy. While Chelsea and United are changing direction again, Arteta has been in place for more than 6 years, outlasting a long list of managers across those two clubs in that span. That stability has become part of the story, and it was a major talking point on the Seeing Red podcast with Tom Canton and John Cross. Beyond reacting to Amorim's dismissal and breaking down wins over Aston Villa and Bournemouth, plus Manchester City's loss to Chelsea, the conversation kept returning to one core idea: structure. Not just who is the coach, but how much power that coach has, and whether the club is built to support a long-term project. Cross pointed to Arsenal as a rare example of patience turning into real strength. He argued that Arsenal's willingness to back Arteta through the messy early phases helped create the stable position they're in now, and that this kind of time and support investment is what can turn a club into something truly solid. Canton's response was sharp and honest. Arteta's arc, he said, has almost become a problem for other clubs, because it tempts them to keep coaches they probably shouldn't. But at the same time, it's still the best example of what can happen when you hire the right person and actually give them time. And that time wasn't smooth. The discussion highlighted how Arsenal could easily have pulled the plug early. 2 8th-place finishes, then 5th, missing out on the Champions League, and a Europa League semi-final exit to Unai Emery's Villarreal. Any of those moments could have pushed a club into panic mode. Instead, the argument is that Arsenal recognized the bigger reality. Arteta didn't have the resources to compete at the required level right away. The squad needed a rebuild. The roster needed to be refreshed. That's where the comparison to Chelsea and United becomes even more pointed. The podcast suggested that recruitment and decision-making structure are often what determine whether a coach survives. If signings don't land, results suffer. And if a coach doesn't have enough influence, or the club isn't aligned behind a clear plan, it becomes much easier for things to collapse. In other words, giving time only works if the coach is empowered to shape the team in a way that matches the vision. Cross also emphasized that Arteta's situation stood out because he pushed to be a true manager, not just a head coach. The idea is simple. Top coaches want a real say in the build, and they want the club to match what they were promised when they took the job. The discussion even pointed to how Arteta survived a low moment, like the home loss to Burnley, because the club stayed behind him. And in that period, with fan pressure affected by the COVID-era environment, Arsenal were able to hold their nerve instead of reacting emotionally. Meanwhile, the big unknowns now shift back to Chelsea and Manchester United. Who replaces Amorim? And how will the next chapter look at Chelsea? The answers may come sooner than people expect. But for Arsenal, the reality stays the same. They're stable, they're moving forward, and they're still in the title chase, while others are starting over again. And that contrast can shape how people judge every manager in the league. Because when two massive clubs hit the reset button again, it forces the same question Cross raised on the show. Is the quick switch actually fixing the problem, or just delaying the real work? The bigger takeaway from the discussion is that time isn't a magic solution by itself. It only becomes valuable when the club's structure supports the plan, and when the coach has the influence to push the squad in the direction he believes it needs to go. That's why the distinction between head coach and manager kept coming up. The podcast point is that if a coach is expected to own the results, he usually wants a meaningful say in the decisions that shape those results. And if he doesn't get that, patience alone won't save him. That's also where Arteta's early struggles get reframed. Those finishes and setbacks could have become a reason to panic. Instead, they became evidence of why alignment matters, because Arsenal chose to treat them as part of a build, not a final verdict. And once the squad was reshaped the way the club believed it needed to be, the results started to reflect that long-term approach. So the repercussions aren't just about Arsenal looking stable, it's about how stability changes your margin for error. When you don't reset every year, you're not constantly starting from zero. You're building on decisions, learning from setbacks, and keeping a clearer identity. For Chelsea and Manchester United, the immediate consequence is obvious. They're changing direction again, which means the next appointment carries even more weight. Because every new coach isn't just judged on results. He's judged on whether the club is finally giving him the structure and authority that the role demands. That's why the question at the end matters so much. Who will replace Amorim? And how will Liam Rosenior do at Chelsea? Because those answers will test the exact theme the show kept returning to. Time, support, structure, and control. And for Arsenal, it's a different kind of pressure. Stability doesn't guarantee trophies, but it does keep you in the fight longer. And right now, while others restart, Arsenal get to stay focused on what they're already doing, chasing the Premier League title.